As Hollywood tries to keep theatrical alive, one of the biggest problems that the movie space is having is that quality is all over the place. Some movies are great, some movies are horrible, some are good enough, and others, they aren't as good as they should be, which really annoys us. And another problem that movies are having is that streaming, for the most part, is so freaking good across the board. In fact, one of the things that looks like it might help save the theatrical experience is putting streaming shows up on the big screen. I mean, does that say it all, or does that say it all? Woo! In fact, the content is so good on streaming that there's too much to celebrate during awards, and so many shows can't be recognized with wins or even nominations. Maybe for streaming, we should do like the Olympics, where you don't just have one winner, but gold, silver, and bronze in each category. That might actually not be a horrible idea, considering how good streaming is these days. What do you think? Do you think that would have any chance of working? And here's something interesting. Despite some very big swings from Netflix this year, and Netflix being one of the places, well, the only streamer that's really helping the theatrical space. Don't worry, we're going to talk about Warner Brothers in a second. But despite these really big swings, only one of their shows made my top 10 list for the year. I mean, sure, they have the occasional banger, not just in terms of pop culture, resonating, but also quality, like Adolescence, right? That was a very, very much lauded show and on a lot of top 10 lists. But just like they are in the movie space, Netflix certainly isn't synonymous with quality. Yet, here's Netflix about to potentially acquire the premier streamer who is synonymous with quality, and that's HBO or HBO Max. And there are 3 HBO shows on my list here this year. I've also got 3 from Apple TV, which is really doing an incredible job, 2 from Hulu, 1 from Disney+, and again, just 1 from Netflix. Which streamers do you think put out the best quality content, right? Not the most popular, but the best quality. And if you agree that it's not Netflix, why are they still so far and above the competition when it comes to subscribers and ratings? I do feel it's partially because they're the Coca-Cola of streaming. Also, I was going through my expenses for the year, and I saw that it's $20 a month for Netflix, and that's with competition. So that's one of the reasons people are nervous about them acquiring Warner Brothers and therefore HBO, because then what could they get away with charging at that point? I mean, yikes. Also, with only one Netflix show, I have one show from Netflix, and then another show which was also a binge drop. But every other show on my list is a weekly release. And I really think that is effective, not only in allowing us to discuss it together and for everybody to watch at the same time, right? But I think that allows us to, not only does it help the shows resonate more, again, in the pop culture space, but it allows us to consider them more, and they become a bigger part of our lives. Netflix is experimenting with the parts model, but I think the success of the finale of Stranger Things, just one episode aired at once, I think really does show that Netflix, I think, would benefit them to maybe be a little bit more open to the weekly model. All right, just as I'm about to start my list of the best shows of the year of 2025, what do you think about the questions I've just raised? Number 10 is Alien Earth. And I understand that for some of you, you're like, whoa, what kind of list is this going to be? But just bear with me. You might not like the bottom of my list, but I would urge you, if you haven't, to check these shows out perhaps. You might actually like them. But just stay with me here. All right, so also, some of you are probably like, heck yeah, Alien Earth deserves to be on this list. What, only number 10? Because a lot of us really enjoyed it. And it did get renewed for a second season, which can't be said for a lot of other shows. I'm just saying, it got a season 2, baby. Maybe it will also learn its lessons, from the mistakes that it clearly made. I mean, I agree. Even if I loved the whole show, you can't argue with the reaction that some people have had. So it needs to course correct. It needs to pivot a little bit. Maybe like Andor did. Maybe it'll have a glow up like that. And the shows they certainly have similarities. They're sci-fi with commentary. And I think that's, is Andor on my list as well? You'll find out. Unless I put it in the poster frame. It's on the list. All right. So anyway, synthetics, cyborgs, and hybrids. Oh my! For those of us who have always enjoyed the synthetics of the Alien universe, which borrows heavily from Blade Runner, So much so that many fans have, for a long time, guessed that the two franchises are connected, and Ridley Scott himself has even teased that they are. This show has been a dream come true, you know, to have synthetics, and then to see that blossom into cyborgs and hybrids. I like the idea of hybrids. I think it's interesting. I know some of you don't care for it, but I think it's a very interesting conversation. Add to that exciting new alien parasites, with all of us agreeing that the Eye is a delightful favorite. And what a setup for season 2. I can't wait for that. You have yourself a real party. What I think was one of the biggest surprises about Alien Earth was the reveal that the alien fandom is divided. A little bit like with DC, we've seen there, right? With some people nostalgic for the first 2 films, right? Even if you didn't see them when they came out, even if, you know, you had discovered them as a child or recently, you know, some people really like the first 2 films. But then other people, they like the more recent films, right? They're slicker, have a little bit more advanced technology, which is also, I think, a little bit closer to the video game that Alien Romulus borrows heavily from. So the nostalgia elements in Alien Earth did not work on, at least seems, a large portion of the alien fandom. You know, maybe you loved Ice Age, right? I mean, I agree that Alien Earth was a little too heavy on the literary and pop culture references. So hopefully they dial those down a little bit too. I just hope that Noah Hawley learns from his few mistakes that have really held back Alien Earth, so that again, it can have an Andor type glow up with season 2, which it is getting. Thank you very much. Number 9, All Her Fault. Ooh, stay with me. Stay with me. This is actually a fabulous show. I'm sure some of you never even considered watching this, but I'm telling you, and I know some of you have, so back me up down below, because everyone that I know who's seen this show is like, that was way better than I ever thought it would be. And this is actually the other binge here. And this is Peacock experimenting with the binge model. I was mistaken. I thought this was a Hulu show. Oops, it's a Peacock show. Whoever thinks of Peacock for shows, right? And I think this is a really exciting step forward for them, actually. But because it was a binge, not a lot of people ended up talking about it. You couldn't really catch up to it. You have to discover it, you know? And it's not the kind of show that would get a season 2. It's like an anthology type show. But you know what? It's getting nominations for awards shows, which again shows how good it is. And that's getting it a little bit more attention, thankfully. Now, like the best entertainment, it operates on different levels. The main one is that it's a fantastic mystery. It is a soap opera thriller with genuinely surprising twists and turns. I watch a lot of TV and movies, and so I'm pretty good at guessing twists and turns at this point. I know for a while I've been pretty good at it, but I had some inkling and I was right on some things, but this really got me. I was like, I never even considered that because that's nuts, but they made it work. I really, really thought it was good. But then below the mystery, there's of course the commentary, right? A good show is about something as well. And this is actually about a couple of things. One of those things being a commentary on parenting in general, which I thought was really good. They have several characters on the show dealing with, you know, protecting their children. But the reason the show is called All Her Fault is that it explores how women unfairly have the primary burden of responsibility when it comes to family, both as wives and as mothers. And as society changes and women have the opportunity to venture outside of the home, to have careers as well as families, they're still expected by a number of husbands and society to still do everything that a traditional wife would have the time to do. So the show really asks, is a marriage a team? Or is it a manager and a subordinate? And I thought that was really well done. I think, you know, the way that women often get so blamed for things, and women get blamed for a lot of stuff, even beyond the family, but this was focusing on that. And I thought I handled it very well. Now, some of you might be like, this sounds awful, Grace. And I'm telling you that this show explores this topic in a really good way. It is not preachy. It's not like uber feminist. It's just discussing something that is true. And so I really, really liked it. And I think that a number of people would enjoy it, even if that message doesn't pertain to you directly. But everybody knows women. So it does pertain to you a little bit, right? So I think that's really good. So it's also, again, it's a great mystery with a really strong cast, right? Headed up by Sarah Snook. I mean, I was surprised she would do this after Succession. I was like, this seems beneath you at this point. But then I watched it and I was like, oh no, it is a great use of your time. Dakota Fanning, fabulous here. Jake Lacey from White Lotus, he's so good. And Michael Pena, who actually has a really big role and does a great job as the detective investigating the situation. They're all fantastic here. It's really, really strong. Number 8, The Diplomat Season 3. Another feminist show. Well, that just goes to show, if that's your reaction, you haven't indeed watched these shows, because neither of these shows is feminist. They are, in fact, just portraying women as people. This is great. A lot of male characters on this show as well. And I've gotten a number of you to check out The Diplomat because I keep pushing it, right? And a number of you, again, have said, thank you so much for the recommendation. Loved it. I think for most modern feminists, I think that I don't know, there's still that part of feminism for sure that's like the more aggressive one from the 1960s, but it had to be aggressive to break through. But I think a lot of feminists today, or who would actually, strong women, let's say, were really only interested in a seat at the table, right? To play the big games with men with no interest in replacing them. And that's what I love about The Diplomat. That is what these characters, that's how these women feel. They want to just be in the mix, right? And so but I also think what's interesting is that while women would love pure, true equality, the reality is that women and men are different. They're different in how they interact with each other. They are different in how they operate. And there's different rules for them in life. And so it's very complicated. I think it's really good. And season 3 of The Diplomat dives into that head first in the political and government landscape. Oh, it's so good. It also features, because I think Deborah Econ is the name of the showrunner and creator here. She writes a very good female character. She's like Jack Schaefer, but for politics. And this is the best depiction of a female president I've ever seen. Casting Allison Janney was a stroke of genius. And I strongly believe that this is not only entertaining, but important to society, because this kind of depiction is what's needed to, I think, get more people on board with the idea of a female president in real life. So that was great. I was like, yes, you're doing the Lord's work. I love it. Kerry Russell, always good here. She's been nominated several times for her work here. I don't know if this show is ever going to win anything because, again, the competition is so tough. But the fact that it even breaks through to get nominations just shows how good it is. She's as good here as she was on The Americans. This is a great show. That was about Russia. This is about the United States. Just as weird and cagey. She's not a spy, though. But she has just as complex a marriage here with Rufus Sewell. Love Rufus Sewell. As another Washington insider and major player. And in fact, he really steps up this season and has a very big role. I don't want to spoil how he steps up, but it was brilliant. And I was like, oh, when it happened, I'm like, we are off to the races. And it was so relatable as a woman. It was amazing. And watching them work together and against each other is just been so great. And this is getting a season 4, already working on it. So you're not, if you want, you might be like 3 seasons, time well spent. So you'll be ready for when the show returns. Number 7, The White Lotus Season 3. And now we're getting to the big shows. And I think a lot of our lists will have these shows on them. But the question is, how did we rank them? In what order? So why is this a little lower down? Well, it's interesting. I think that while this show was airing, a couple of people, it felt maybe not a lot happened week to week, particularly at the beginning of the season. And some people were like, is this the weakest of the White Lotus seasons? And I think that you could make that argument to a degree. But the way this show ramped up in terms of social media interaction every Sunday that it aired was an incredible thing to see, because even though the earlier seasons had been better, this was the season that got everybody tuning in. I mean, this just really finally truly put the show on the map in the mainstream. And that's amazing. I think that this, therefore, arguably is also the strongest of the seasons. I'm curious, how would you rank the White Lotus seasons to date? I was worried also, I'd gotten the first, 5 episodes or so in advance, and I was worried that Mike White might have gone too far. But it turns out that nobody can push the edge of the envelope like Mike White. Like, everybody was like, I think that was helpful to watch it weekly. This was the show that also made me feel that it's tough to watch sometimes something not with you, right? Because I think everybody was like, are we doing this? And it was just, you just got swept up in the craziness of it all, right? Which I guess is how some of these crazy things happen in real life. That's interesting. And I think it turns out that nobody can push the edge of the envelope like Mike White, a super fan of not just movies and TV, but reality TV. And I think therefore he really understands how to engage audiences in a trashy way, which of course is what reality TV is all about. The lavish locales and the all-star casts are a big part of the White Lotus's success. But with season 3, I think it was actually quite clever to choose an exotic location, Thailand, and I think Mike White shot it beautifully. It really added to the mystery and the tension of the season. And a cast that was slightly less famous, which I think made them more likely to go places that maybe other more established actors wouldn't. So like this cast was game to do the crazy stuff that Mike White had lined up for them. And the White Lotus could not only survive the loss of Tanya, but in fact thrive, although of course she still was in the background. It was still technically still an extension of her story, which was quite clever. And I wonder if they can even continue to do that now. But it would seem that at this point, the only thing that can stop the success of the show is Mike White himself. And he is its true star, even though he's not on camera, which I find fascinating. After the jaw-dropping twists and turns of season 3, including a shocking, yet surprisingly, I think, touching monologue by Sam Rockwell. Again, you're like, what are we listening to? But this is amazing, right? I mean, like, you're like, wow, I thought that was incredible. I mean, you have to wonder where Mike White could possibly go from here with a season 4, right? Like, where could you, is there more? Or have we hit the ceiling? We'll find out. And I think for that reason, season 4 is going to be the hottest season yet for this show. Number 6, Pluribus. And some of you might be surprised that it's kind of low down on my list. And that's for 2 reasons. Well, 3 actually. One, I don't think enough happened by the end of the first season. You know, I think it wasn't, you know, I think it's still a little elusive, right? In terms of what's really going on. So I think that makes it slightly, I mean, I liked the ending, but I think it makes it a little slightly less satisfying. Then, 2, it's going to take way too long for a second season. I mean, Vince Gilligan has said he didn't think he was going to necessarily get one, but I mean, that's on him. He should have still started to get the ball rolling just in case. Apple TV kind of had to know what they had here, I would think. And so it's almost, you know, it's a real buzzkill to know that you're going to have to wait so long for the story to continue. And especially because they didn't give you really a strong enough hook, I think, to make you wait that long, right? I mean, there are some comparisons to Severance, but I think Severance had a stronger ending to season 1. And it's been tough for Severance too. And then the other reason is that it's not even that popular. That's the issue with Pluribus. I mean, it's not a super popular show. And so there's something that's off. You know, I guess it's good that Vince Gilligan hasn't started season 2 because maybe he can learn some lessons from season 1 as well. Some of you are probably like, it's perfect, don't touch it. But I mean, go and look at the Rotten Tomatoes audience score. It's got some problems. So yes, not everyone loves Pluribus. It does not enjoy the hive mind of fandom that the alien virus has created on Earth within the show, nor the hive mind of fandom that Carol Sturka's Waikaro series of fantasy novels enjoys, which, by the way, I think is a point they're trying to make. They're comparing how her fans are all very similar in act to what happens with the virus, you know? It's a very subtle show. But we'll talk about that in a moment. But I also think what's interesting about the show is that I think it explores loneliness, but just through a sci-fi filter. I think something that more and more people are feeling today, not only because of the advancements of technology, which separates us, but also because of the pandemic, which I think created a lot of memories, at least. And I think, you know, it's been hard for people to come out of the pandemics. You know, a whole generation didn't learn social skills. I think this show really taps into a lot of that. But again, as I said, it's very subtle, perhaps too subtle, right? But I think what it's asking is, how much can you get away with if you do it with a smile, right? Like when John Cena is I don't want to give any spoilers away in case you haven't watched it. And I would recommend it. I think it's a great show. It's probably even better if you can binge it, right? You know, in terms of the pacing. But John Cena is trying to explain away something that's pretty freaking bad, but he's doing it with such a happy way that maybe it's okay. Of course it's not. But I mean, it's interesting. Pluribus is about groupthink and the lemming effect, right? But also the importance of individuality and what makes us individuals, really what defines us. And it's a complex answer that is features both good and bad elements, right? Like we're not perfect and that's good. I think, you know, it didn't even occur to me until I was writing out the notes for this video. And that's why I think Vince Gilligan made his 2 heroes who haven't succumbed to the alien virus, who are immune, such abrasive characters, that they have a very prickly surface, yet deep down they are good. And they're dealing with some the group that has a very pleasant exterior, yet inside they are horrible. And so that's really, really clever. I like that a lot. But again, the show is so subtle that I think that I'm sure some of you are like, leave it alone. It should be subtle. If you can't figure it out, that's on you. But I mean, it's a problem for the show because again, these audience scores are not great. But Pluribus, like the beginning of the season finale, was one of the most shocking and evil things I've ever seen. To remind you that just like the show reminds Carol, these guys are really bad. But it's just such an insidious evil. And insidious means so gradual, so slow, so subtle, so behind the scenes that you don't even realize it's happening. And I also think it speaks a little bit to things that are going on today. So I find it riveting, even with its flaws. And I think it's really fantastic. Number 5, Andor Season 2. You know, it's crazy that Tony Gilroy can have such disdain for Star Wars, yet is responsible for the best content for the brand in the Disney era. And I feel bad that he's not staying with Star Wars, but I guess they already threw enough money at him. And I don't know if you can really feel that Disney got their money's worth, because I don't know if enough people are still very difficult in their attitude towards Star Wars these days. Andor didn't turn things around. People really treated it like a one-off. Will Hollywood and fan history remember Andor, which is similar to the very question the show asks itself, and that is, will history remember its heroes? That's fascinating, right? I think everyone can agree that the best part of the first season of Andor was Stellan Skarsgård's now iconic monologue about burning his life for a sunrise he'll never see. I think of that line actually quite a bit. I think about it regularly. It pops into my mind, I'd say every couple of months. It really had, I think, a strong impression. I mean, how about you? How often does that line come to mind for you? And I think that what's so great about Andor Season 2 is that the entire second season is an exploration of that single line. Sure, we all dream of a better future. Sure, we all think, hey, maybe somebody should do something. But who actually does? Who actually is willing to put their life on the line for that better future? A future they'll never see, right? A sacrifice no one will ever know about so that others can enjoy, who did nothing to bring it about. Well, the people who did make the ultimate sacrifice quietly slip away and don't get to enjoy it. It is I think for most people, an unfathomable level of sacrifice to imagine. Although, I think, especially because we've been at, there hasn't been major wars for quite some time. But, back in the day, there were a lot of tombs of the unknown soldier. A number of countries have a variation on this. And rebels are also soldiers. So I think it's all the same sentiment. The unknown soldier represents all those who died, who were lost to the war and maybe who are not remembered. It's really an amazing thing. There's this old Cary Grant movie where he's at the tomb of the unknown soul. I forget what it's called at Westminster Abbey. But he's there, and Barry Fitzgerald is there, another great famous actor. And, Cary Grant looks and says, that could be my father, okay, who was lost at the war. And Barry Fitzgerald says, that could be my son. And it was beautiful. I think that's a similar sentiment to what Andor Season 2 is about. But to explore this idea in a Star Wars piece of content, I mean, that is an incredible use of the IP. I mean, it's just amazing. And I think it was brilliant to air this in three weeks in a row, in 3 chunks, three episodes at a piece, and with time jumps between each one to really show the span of the conflict. It ended up, we were really nervous going in. Not a lot of people watched the first season, but it ended up being a beautiful experiment. It was just really incredible. And the final night was truly something special to experience because we all clicked on Rogue One right afterwards because the very final episode goes right into Rogue One, just like Rogue One itself went directly into Star Wars A New Hope. And a lot of people, after they saw Rogue One, went home and watched A New Hope. That was really cool. So to have so many people so locked in and so on the same page about something so powerful but also so important was incredible. Really, it's one of the best, I think, things that franchise work or franchises ever done. Number 4, It Welcome to Derry. Oh, another prequel. Maybe Hollywood is getting the hang of these. Although, as you'll discover if you haven't watched it yet, It Welcome to Derry is more than just your standard prequel. And I think that's one of the reasons that it works as well as it does. What are your thoughts on prequels these days? Like the best streaming shows, this one is peak quality. It doesn't even feel like a series. It feels like you're watching an 8-hour movie. The Muschiettis and their creative team cleverly expand the story, not just in the world of it, but of all of Stephen King's stories. Most effectively, The Shining. With the addition of a young Dick Hallorann. Including Hallorann and casting Chris Chalk in the role are two of the best decisions that this show made. And of course, giving Bill Skarsgård the chance to not only return as Pennywise, but to explore and expand the character's history and mythology. The final 2 episodes of this show, when Skarsgård truly returns, well, you just don't get better than that. My goodness, especially because unlike so many other streaming shows, Derry didn't save all the good stuff for a potential season 2. They put it all on the table, and it was glorious. Also, while the entire cast is very good, Derry really outdoes itself with its cast of child actors. And, as we've discussed when I was breaking down the show each week, it was revealed that they had a child acting coach. Not a child who was an actor. That would be hilarious. There is an SNL sketch for you. No, it was an acting coach for children. And he really did a wonderful job. And also, it was so great to not only see the return of Madeleine Stowe, but potentially the best role she's ever had. All right, so no spoilers, though. No spoilers. If you haven't watched Welcome to Derry, or if you started it and stopped, I really think you should try and go back and watch it, because it's number 4 on this list for a reason. I bet a lot of you agree. Number 3, Severance Season 2. Only number 3, although some of you might feel this is too high up. I'm curious where you guys place Severance Season 2. But it's had a rough time of it. So it kicked off 2025. It was the first big show of the year, and it would seem like nobody would be able to stop it. Because of the amazing season 1 finale, which was one of the greatest moments I've ever had watching TV. And everybody had to discover Severance on their own because, nobody really watched it when it came out. But season 1 ended on such a cliffhanger that, people went into season 2 being like, oh man, this is going to be amazing. And its fandom had grown by that point quite a bit. But since then, including a season that was, kind of choppy, there were episodes where, Severance is a weekly drop, and there were weeks where people were like, that's it? So it was a tough road for season 2. But since then, so many other wonderful shows have come out that Severance lost almost all of its awards momentum and lost most of its awards categories at the Emmys to the Pitt. So also, I think the mythology is getting a little dicey. And some of us have been wondering just how strong a creative grip Ben Stiller and Dan Erickson have on this show, especially since creative issues with season 2 was the reason that we had to wait so long for it. It was 3 years between seasons because they had to actually scrap what they did and start over again because they were having, that's the rumor. They're like, it just took us this long. But we're like, And as I said, Pluribus is in danger of a similar situation because they are just so far behind. It's hard to make your audience wait that long. It's harder to please them when you do. Stranger Things is having also a similar issue. But still, nobody can deny that, again, when Severance season 2, when it started, it was a really hot deal. And then also there were episodes when it did deliver on the promise of season 1. Like the crazy love triangle, right? Mr. Milchick standing up for himself to really an amazing, I think once again, they stuck the landing with the season finale. I just thought like the video camera conversation and the escape in the maze at the end and Mr. Milchick with his marching band. I mean, these were amazing. These were amazing. And it was must-see TV every week, even when the fandom was frustrated. So I think everybody will are you still on board for Severance season 3? I think it's going to take a while, so you'll probably maybe forget about the bad stuff and only remember the good stuff. But one thing that's a little scary is that Ben Stiller has said that he will only be a producer for season 3 and he will no longer be directing because he wants to focus on other things. And I can understand that for him creatively, but it's not a good look for season 3. Number 2, runner-up, The Studio. Now, I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea. In fact, historically, general audiences don't really like stories about how Hollywood works, don't want to know how the sausage is made. But some of us really love it. And in fact, Hollywood loves stories about itself. So that's why they keep making them, even though they don't always do so well. I think The Studio is pretty successful, though, with fans. And of course, it's a huge awards winner. You just don't get better than this, except for The Offer. I never miss an opportunity. I think this is the second time I've talked about it in this video. Watch The Offer. It's still pertinent. You might be like, well, maybe I should switch to The Studio. Well, here's the thing. The Offer focuses on what Hollywood was like in the 1970s. It was just coming out of the studio system. And I think The Offer is more about the politics of how a single movie is made from top to bottom and everybody who's involved. Where The Studio is about the problems that Hollywood has today, particularly from the studio executives, which are getting all the blame today. That's a good way to describe it. That's why I think they're both still worth watching. The Offer is over on Paramount Plus, and The Studio, of course, is on Apple TV. So yes, The Studio is extremely timely, with Rogan and his team of creatives not only interviewing many people who actually work in the business and taking from their stories, their real life stories, but Rogan drawing on his own experience as a very prolific producer. But while other shows and movies have certainly highlighted what's wrong with Hollywood these days, what's so special about The Studio is that it criticizes Hollywood with love. You know, it's not excusing a lot of what Hollywood does, but what it's trying to do is explain it and saying this doesn't happen without reason. Let me show you where the studio executives are coming from. Let's show you what hurdles they're dealing with, you know, because it is a very specific set of problems. And, you know, the studio still believes that movie magic exists, and that's really wonderful. I mean, I had tears in my eyes when the season ended. It was at CinemaCon. They were like an industry event. And if you can make somebody cry at CinemaCon, I mean, that's just beautiful. So yes, The Studio is a very honest love letter to Hollywood. And isn't that true love when you can still love something despite looking its flaws right in the face? I mean, that's amazing. You're like, I love Hollywood. I can make it better. I'm not saying it's a healthy relationship. All right. Also, many of the episodes are brilliantly meta. Like, of course, the award-winning episode about trying to capture a long take, and the episode is a long take itself. And then, of course, another fun example is they had visiting the set of a film noir mystery that the studio is making, only for the episode itself to very cleverly be turned into a film noir thriller itself. It's just a phenomenal piece of entertainment. And yes, my number one is The Pitt. I agree with the Emmys. They got it right. Best drama, The Pitt. Best comedy, The Studio. But as you can see, I put The Pitt a little bit ahead of The Studio as my number one. I'm curious to see what all your number ones are. All right, so isn't this just a reboot of ER? That's what Michael Crichton's widow has claimed in court. But I don't know about that. Sure, both are medical dramas that take place in the ER, but The Pitt, I think, well, I've never actually watched ER, so I'd be curious if you did watch both, what do you think the difference is? But to me, ER seems a little more soap opera-y, where to me, The Pitt is much more realistic. So also what's a big difference is that this takes the 24 approach, right? Telling a story in real time. Not a single day, but a single shift in a Pittsburgh emergency room. By the way, as someone who has family in Pittsburgh, I get a huge kick out of all the Pittsburgh references on the show. I'm like, I love it. But in addition to that in real time format, The Pitt has a level of realism, as I said to it, that a network show couldn't deliver. Watching The Pitt, you learn how an ER works, which I think is so cool. That is really cool. And it's also a visual, that can be a very scary place. And I think it makes it more accessible, which I think is a great service that it's providing. It's also a visual encyclopedia of medical conditions and circumstances, a crash course in modern medicine, which everybody loves that stuff. Everybody loves those kind of like YouTube videos and stuff like that. And they turned it into a show. And then you see people, the patients, at some of the most challenging, traumatic, and intimate moments of their lives. I think this show has tremendous empathy, which I think is something that maybe you don't realize off the bat is one of its core strengths. And also, you see that the job of a doctor is not just to heal the body, but also the mind and the soul of patients. And it's just really fantastic. And aside from Noah Wyle, they do all of this without any big stars. And I applaud this show for resisting that. Not only do you give, I think, unknown actors a shot, right, a chance to level up, but also I think it makes the show not about the stars, but the story. And, Noah Wyle is not only a producer, it was his idea to do this show, but, he's the head of the department. So it makes sense that he would have a little more star power. It grounds him and allows him to stand out like that. But, they've started to give out more casting awards, right? Each awards division has created a casting award. And here's a great contender. I think this is an incredibly well-cast show because the cast is huge and also depicts so many different types of people, and they're all done perfectly well. Just perfect. I love it. Season 2 is right around the corner. And that's something else that's very exciting about the Pitt is that it looks like they're going to be able to do a season every year, which is unheard of in the age of streaming, but very, very much welcome by viewers. Now, I'm sure some of you are asking, hey, Grace, if you like a show that comes back every year, how the heck did Slow Horses not make your list? Because they had a season this year, just like they have for the past 5 years, right? Well, I love Slow Horses, and thanks again to everybody who finally got me to watch that show. It's incredible. I binged all 5 seasons, basically, like right after the Emmys, where it beat out, and I think, as I said, it beat out some of the shows on this list for directing, and I was like, I gotta watch it if it's better directed than those episodes, and I fell in love with the show. But I didn't include it here, even though I did enjoy season 5, I did, but not a lot of people did. Season 5 hit a rough patch because it became more political, like The Boys. The Boys did the same thing, and it had a hard time. Although while I liked some of you didn't like the last season of The Boys. I liked the last season of The Boys very much. But with Slow Horses, I think that it was the weakest season that they've had to date. What a time to have your weakest season, right? I mean, just when you were trying to pivot into a more political space, that's when you need to be your strongest. And then to make matters even worse, the weakest season comes after their strongest season they've ever had. I thought season 4 was their best season. I loved season 4. Which do you think is the best season of Slow Horses? I thought season 4 was just so clever. And I thought the show leveled up in its mythology. So season 5 was a little bit of a step back, but I love the characters at this point. I love the show. They still have me. And season 6 is right around the corner. Are you going to drop Slow Horses even though you thought season 5 wasn't as good? No, I think like 90% of you I would think would not. And I love the fact, again, that they're able to come out every year. In fact, they are so on it that when season 5 ended, they had a trailer for season 6 with footage already because it's done and they're already in post-production. That is amazing. That is so cool that they were able to do that. And it just gets you excited for what's next. But maybe I'll put season 6 on my list next year. Let's see. So this is my list this year of the top 10 shows. And hey, as I said, streaming is an amazing space right now. It was hard to just have 10. There are a lot of great shows that I left off here, and I'm sure will be on some of your lists. So what do you think of my ranking? Which of these shows have you seen? Which have you not seen? Do you think you might go check it out now? And of course, I'm excited to see your own lists down below. Share those thoughts and lists, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.